Aerybeth Sewing, and today we're going to start this easy to sew simplicity pattern 9132. This is a one pattern piece pajama pant. It is a wide leg, kind of a straight leg pant. The very first one is your sample one. It will work. You will have a pair of pajamas, but you always want to make your very first one that is not like your main one, like your Christmas pajamas. This is your practice one, the one that you're going to say, all right, the next time I make it, I need to make it a smaller size, or I want to make the legs a little bit skinnier, or, this. Start with a pattern and start with the fabric that is not your, like the main one that you're making, the most expensive fabric that you're going to be using. So let's start with just a nice cotton fabric, nothing stretchy, shiny, fuzzy, furry, just a nice cotton fabric. Pre-wash it before you start because you don't know how much that fabric is going to shrink on you. So you want to do that. So these on the front, most patterns do not have the pattern piece showing on the front, but it does have the sizes, and it shows you that you have extra small to large in the children's size and extra small to extra large in the adult size. And then on the back, I'll take that one out, of the envelope, it has at the top, kind of hard to see, but if you have this envelope, you're going to have this to sew this anyway. It will have the hip size for the children from all the way from 4 extra small size 4 all the way up to a 16 hip size 36, and then it has the teens and adults all the way from 31 to 49. And these to me run big. The hips run really big, but if you measure the pattern width, you can see how big the hip size is going to be as well. All right, so once you determine where you are, you measure your hips and you say I'm a 40, or I'm a 46, or I'm a 33, or so. You determine what size you are. If you are at the end of a size, say extra small, and it's a 32.5, and you're like a 34. To me, the pattern runs big. You could go with the extra small, but until you know the pattern, any pattern, you want just going on up to the next size, because you want to have some wiggle room. These are pajamas. These are not pants. They will not stretch if they're cotton, so you don't want a really tight pair of pajamas. All right, so once you determine your size, then you're going to look at the back of the envelope, and you're going to see that a 45-inch bolt is going to take, for a medium, 2 5/8, or a large 2 3/4. Okay, and then a 60-inch bolt is actually kind of the same. And what those are, if you go into the fabric store and you see all the different fabrics, the ones that are on the smaller bolt, and let me see if I've got one over here. Okay, let's see. This is a bolt from the store, and it's got the wooden at the bottom, the cardboard. Okay, so that is a standard, like a 45-inch bolt. However, the fabric on it is usually around 40, 41, 42. So that is a standard 45-inch bolt. The longer bolts with the fleece that you see, those are the bigger bolts. I always suggest get a little bit extra, because you never know if you're going to, mess up or something. So if it's 2 3/4, I always just round up, get 3 yards. You can use the extra for other little projects. And then it tells you the finished garment measurements. So if you choose the extra small or small, you see the finished measurements. If you sew the correct way, the 5/8 inch, you will end up with a 40-inch finished measurement around the hip area. Okay, so these are good things to go by, that if you want them a little bit more baggy, some people like really baggy pants for pajamas, this kind of gives you that to tell you what the finished measurement. It also says the side length and then the leg width, so it tells you how wide the leg's going to be. So those, and then the rest down here is another language. So this is what you're getting, is how much fabric, your finished measurements, what size you're doing, and then don't forget the notions. sometimes the notions are right under what the item is you're making. So this says elastic, and then it says what size elastic. So basically you need elastic to go around your waist. So this says 1 5/8 yard, or children's 1 1/4 yard, and you may not use all of that for either one, but just make sure you get your waist measurements. And it says twill tape for ties, and that's just a decorative tie in the front. So if you don't want to get that, you don't have to spend the extra money, because if your t-shirt's going to go over and it's for home use, you don't have to use that. But also there's also notions up at the top. It says thread. So you need to know that sometimes it's underneath, sometimes it's the top, sometimes it's both. And then it also tells you what kind of fabrics you can use. Flannel, which is a cotton, gingham, cotton, chambray, cotton, cotton blends, cotton interlock. Those are the stretchy ones, but for your first ones, I wouldn't suggest using a stretchy one, because they do fold up, the edges roll up on you. So use a cotton that you can see to start with, and then that way you can know how to make it easily, and then you can do the harder fabric. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now when you open your envelope, you'll have 2 pattern pieces that are folded up, and it's the whole thing. I mean, they're huge. This is the adult size, and this is the child size. Do not cut it out to your size. Cut out the whole entire pattern, leaving the black lines. Okay, so if you see this, I've cut it down, and it's not perfect. You see the little bit of pattern hanging out? You just don't want to cut off any of your black lines. This says extra small, small, medium, and large. And then the adult side is huge, because it's your whole leg wrapped around. And again, it's a straight leg, a wide kind of leg. Okay, so this is a big pattern piece. Okay, but again, cut it out to the biggest size, which is the extra large. And we're gonna, if you see, this is folded down. I made a large, so this is folded down on the side. And then when we get over to the cutting table, I'll show you how to, you can't really fold a curve. I'll show you how to mark that as well. But again, don't cut it out to your size. Cut it out the biggest size. That way when you have other people you might want to make a pattern, a pair of pajama pants for, you don't have to buy a whole nother $18 to $20 pattern, or if you happen to get it on sale, that's great. But these aren't cheap anymore, so cut it out to your biggest size and don't lose any of that. And then it does tell you what's on the front, and I'll go over a lot of this out there on the cutting table. But you're going to cut 2 of those. This side, the smaller curve would be the front. The bigger curve is your back side, and it tells you the center back seam and the center front seam. It also tells you the waistline. So when you fold down the top, let me pull it down a little bit. When you pull down the top, you'll see extra large, large, medium, small, extra small, and that's the waistline. So when we're folding it down to make the casing for the elastic, it should even up with that. But again, nobody's the same. So from crotch to the waist is going to be different. So you're going to try it on and make sure you don't need to cut off a little bit extra, or if you want to leave the whole thing and have it come up higher. We don't ever want to sit down and have our pants ride down in the back. And then the same thing for the bottom. Now this is interesting. On the bottom, so it has extra small line, small, medium, large, extra large. So these lines are all here. I have short legs, so I can fold mine up even to a medium. But if you have somebody that's tall, don't fold these in. In fact, measure from the top down and see how long the whole pant is. And if you need to add more, you can measure down an inch. Measure down an inch and mark it, measure down an inch and mark it, and then draw a line, or 2 inches. However, if you need to extend that leg a little bit, on the pattern it shows that you could actually cut on this line that's in the middle of it and add length here. You can do that. A lot of times, since these legs are so wide, I just add it to the bottom. But that is your preference to do either one of those. This will just add more length in the middle and give it a wider, as you go down. But that's the start of it. So we're going to go over to the cutting table, and we are going to lay this out, and I'm going to talk you through all cutting these out for you, okay? Okay, everyone, we're laying out the pattern now, and I'm going to cut it out to the size large, and you can see the markings on it that we talked about. Okay, so I'm going to fold in the sides. I can actually trace this on some tracing paper, a pattern tracing paper. I always leave it again to the biggest size because I never know if I'm going to make them for anybody else that might be another size. So you don't want to waste your pattern, and you don't want to have to buy another pattern. All right, however, okay, so when you have your fabric, I'm going to move this real quick. All right, I folded it over. This is how it is on the bolt. It is folded with selvage to selvage, okay? And when you open it up, it's one layer. But for this particular pattern piece, it is a very large pattern piece. It's one size, and so it will not fit on this width. So you have to actually open it up and remember it would be one, and then I folded it over this way. So normally it would be on the bolt, selvage to selvage, one layer. You open it up, and then I took it and I folded it all this way. Okay, now with this type of fabric, there's not a problem with that. But on other types of fabric, say that there's animals or little faces or things going in a certain direction. Now you got one piece one way and the other piece laying upside down the other way. So what I'm going to have to do, and this is very particular for velours or velvet or corduroy. So if I had it laying like this, one piece going, imagine, okay, this piece is going this way, and then it goes all the way up here, and then we flip it back this way. So now it's upside down. So now you have two pieces, but they're upside down. So I'm going to slice this open here and slice it all the way down, and then I'm going to turn it. So this edge will be over here. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to start right here. I'm going to pause it so I can use, when I get back to the sewing room, I'll get back to the cameras again so you can see it better. But I'm just going to slice this all the way down, just like this. And then I'm going to rotate this down to the other end, and I'll show you. Okay, I sliced all the way down. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to pull it around, put that back at the top, and then this down here. And again, you can't really tell it on this fabric as much, but you will be able to tell it on something with a nap, something that you can really tell. If you take a pair of corduroy pants, if you have one, or the next time you go to the store, and look at the legs, okay? Hold them out in front of you, and then turn one of the legs upside down. And once you do that, you'll see that it looks like it's two different colors. The same thing if you have some velour, like velvet type sweatpants or anything fuzzy furry like that, or a jacket. All right, so I'm now just going to straighten all this back out. All right, so a minute ago this was down there, so now I've just swerved it around, because if there is any type of difference in the way the fabric looks going, you know, upside down, you don't want it to be like that. And also, then you didn't want, like, say they have these little frogs on the fabric. Then one side the frogs would be looking down, and one side the frogs would be looking straight up at you. So again, if you have to do this, if it's on the bolt, it's always folded in half. Open it up all the way and stretch it way on out, and then take that and fold it back over the top. But then there's a crease. You slice that open and twist it the other way, just the top piece. All right, now I'm ready to lay my pattern back on top. All right, now I've laid the pattern back on top, and there's a few things you have to do. I've folded the edge in for the large. You really can't fold the edge in for the large here, so you can peel it back and mark it, or just pull it back and cut right at that edge. I'm going to pin right at that edge. If you were going all the way back to the extra small, you can actually mark that with a pattern tracing pin, and it's kind of like the old-fashioned carbon paper. But again, you can always pull it back and mark it with a pen underneath it, or pull it back and cut underneath it, or trace it on some tracing paper, which I have some of this. You just put it over the pattern piece and trace the pattern to your size. And if you're going to make a lot of a particular size and you don't want to cut your pattern down and you know, waste it, because you want to be able to use this for many different sizes, so you could actually trace your pattern and then have a pattern size in every one of those, which is a great suggestion if you're going to be doing this for a lot of different people, especially Christmas PJs. So, all right, so let's talk about what we see on here. We see some notches, okay, and we're going to make sure we mark those. Okay, there's 3 here, there's 1 on the side, there's not any on the bottom, and then there's another one over here. There's 2 right there, okay. Now, I also folded down the top line for the large, okay. But say that you're long-waisted and you want some extra room and you want it to go up higher on your waist, or say that you measure down from the crotch and your legs are really short, or that you want to make shorts out of them. You could always fold it up to wherever you need it. This is a good pattern to fold up, and you can also make pajama shorts, okay? All right, so we see this little arrow right here. All right, and here's our selvage on the edge. So what we want to do is we want to make this line parallel to the selvage. This is the grain line, okay? The grain line is parallel to the selvage, and the selvage is a little area that's not cut. See, that's where I washed it, and you see all the extra. So this is the area that's not cut on the side when it's folded on the bolt when you buy it. All right, so I'm going to measure from here to the selvage, and I'm going to measure from that end to the selvage and make sure my pattern is not twisted. All right, so both of those are 17 and about 1/4. Okay, so once I get that straight, then I'm going to put a pin in both sides, and then I can finish pinning all the way around. All right, so pinned there and there. And you just kind of smooth as you go. And then after I smooth and pin, then I'm going to go back and I'm going to mark these little, some people cut into the fabric. I don't like cutting into it. I usually make the mark on the outside. And then say that you cut and you forgot to cut the little triangle. You can always mark it with a marking pin, a sewing pin. Make sure it's not permanent. Some of the sewing pins that are out there are say that they're Singer sewing pins, but they may say permanent on there because that's for marking actually on tracing paper, on patterns, and not on fabric. So be careful, get the right kind. I have some different ones on my website on Aerybeth.com, and it has disappearing with heat, and then some disappearing with water, and then disappearing over time. So just make sure you test it on a scrap first before you use it on your good fabric, okay? All right, so we're going to go back and mark all of our spots. And different patterns will have different ones. This one only has triangles. Some have little circles that would be like for notches to match up something, or to put ribbons in, or to put a pocket on. These don't have pockets. This is just a basic pajama, one pattern piece, pajama pants, or pajama shorts. And so we're just going to mark the triangles, okay? Okay, now I'm going to mark where I couldn't fold it under because it's a curve. So I'm going to take the pin out, and I'm going to place my hand right here on this line. You see the line underneath. So just kind of fold it back a little bit, and you can just mark that as I'm holding that line, as I'm going down through there. You can do this with a pen too. I'm holding the line and kind of marking it against my thumb as I go down. Let's see if I can get a better view for you. Okay, so here, put my hand right on that line, and I'm picking it up, and I'm putting it right against my fingers. So as it curves, it's kind of going right against my finger. All right, and then when I pick it up, you see the line, and you just straighten it back up a little bit. All right, so I've got my little curve there. You see that? And you can do this with a disappearing ink pen or a water erase pen. This will come off. This is just chalk, Taylor's chalk. It'll come out in the wash. And then here's my 3 right here. And so I'm just gonna give it a great big giant one. Okay, you don't have to sit there and go ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. So just get a big one. Just know that your double one on the other side is just a little bit smaller. All right, so now when we cut, here's our edge over here. You can see this. So we're going to cut it right on this edge, and then when we turn, there's our large right there. And then we can just pull this back and cut on that line. All the way up, all the way up. And then right here, straighten her back out. We'll just turn here, go straight up, and then turn. Yeah, it was kind of messy right there. Okay, so that's your 2 curves. Now we're going to get the scissors and cut all the way around. Right here. And then I'm going to, this is the big one because it's 3 triangles. And then you're going to go up here. And then I'm just going to lay that back down. And then we're going to finish going around the whole thing. The rest of it should be pretty easy because I folded it and actually ironed it down. So you can take it on the iron and you can iron the paper. It won't hurt anything. But if I want to make sure it's all smooth again, you can put your pins back in. And make sure it's smooth and just pull your pattern out and make sure it looks really good. See? All right, we're going to finish cutting around this. And just be careful, don't cut your pattern because that's folded down. And you don't want to accidentally cut the fold because you'll be cutting off the extra large size. Okay, so here's the other curve over here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the pins out for a minute. And pull that back, and you can see the line. So I'm going to cut on that line that I made. And I drew a much smaller arrow right here. Because we'll be matching those up in a little bit. And then that's my curve right here. And then I'll put that right back. And I'll put my pins back in it just for now. And see, there's our large size right there. And then we're going to finish cutting around this. So we've cut all the way around our pajama pants now. I'm going to pull all this extra fabric out of the way. And then make sure and double check and make sure all my triangles are marked. See how they're sticking out from the edge? Okay, so I folded this back up. Always fold your pattern pieces back up nice and neat like this. And then you look here on the front, like we've talked about before. We cut 2 of these out. So there's 2 layers, okay? And this is the pants front and back, all right? And then it tells you the size, and then it tells you what pattern, you know, in case you lose the envelope. So fold it up where you can see it. I mean, you can keep folding it down to the size of the envelope, but with one piece is not a big deal, but when you're dealing with a dress or a coat or anything like that, you don't want to have to unwrap every little pattern piece to see what pattern you have to get the right one. All right, So we're going to start with that, and you can put that in the envelope to keep it safe, or you can just put it somewhere nearby in case you need to look at it again. Okay, so we're back over to the big tables, and let's go ahead and start with number 1. This is with right sides together, stitch front to back at inner leg. All right, so the picture shows right here. All right, so let's show what that is. All right, so we have our pattern piece. Okay, so this is our pattern piece. All right, one side is the back and one side is the front. The one with the lower dip will be the back, okay, because we need more crotch to back area, okay. So I went ahead and labeled it so I would remember that's the right side. So I put the right sides together. All right, so that's the right side, okay. And the reason we always put right sides together is if you think about it, that way we won't see any of the pretty side. And on a different type of fabric, you would see like flowers on one side and you wouldn't see it on the other. So we're going to do right sides together because the seams of your clothing are on the inside, okay? So if I pull this up, okay, right here, here's the right side. And if I put, we're going to put these two sides together. There's our right sides, okay? That means the right side or the pretty side is inside. All right, so I'm going to move the other piece out of the way for a minute. All right, so I want to show you something. These are not the arrows that you match up. Don't think about that at all at the top. Don't think about the curve at all. What you're matching up is this leg seam, okay? And it should match up perfectly, including these little notches that you cut out earlier. You match that up, okay? So let's look back at the picture. Do you see the photo, the drawing, okay? So the drawing shows it not matching up. It's not just open, it's not matching up with the curve, but it is matching up here, okay? So we look back up here. The notches match up. They should match up perfectly. There's your notches. Okay, and it should match up with not hanging off. All right, so we're going to pin this all the way down. Now, if you think about being in front of your sewing machine, you're going to stitch from the top down this way because we want the fabric to be on the outside of our machine. We don't want it to be all underneath the throat plate and giving us a hard time and having to worry about accidentally sewing over something. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this, and then I'm going to pin the other one, and then I'm going to show you what to do next. Look at these two. Also, while I'm doing this, this one has a curve and the bottom sticking out this way, and this one has the bottom sticking out going this way. So you should have opposites. Okay? If we have it. All right, now we're going to go back to our front page. This little section over here. So see our two pictures. All right, right down here it says seam allowance 5/8 of an inch unless otherwise stated. Okay, so we're going to go back over here to our number 1, and it says with right sides together, stitch front to back at inner leg seams of the pants section. So we're going to stitch only down here, only down here. And remember, these don't match up exactly. Leave them alone. Don't try to match them up. Hey everyone, I'm going to put this little part in between my video for some weird reason. Whether I forgot to hit record or something, it did not show on the sewing machine sewing the legs. So you're just going to sew down the whole length of the leg, but I'm going to show you here on your pattern. It will say 5/8 inch seam allowance unless otherwise stated. And on your machine, if you follow the line back, most machines have 5/8 inch here on the back. And so what you're going to do
is you're going to line up your fabric on that line. If your machine does not have something like that, you can measure from the needle to the edge and make sure that's the 5/8 inch. So whenever you're starting to sew, you put your fabric under, and I start close to the top, but not always all the way to the top, because sometimes it shoves the fabric into, in certain machines, down into where it's picking up the bobbin thread. And so I start a little bit further and roll the needle in, or hit your needle down button. And then I will back stitch just a couple stitches to the back, and then go all the way down, keeping my fabric even with the line that's the 5/8 inch line. You also could do a magnetic seam gauge, and you could put this, it's magnetic, and it's also on my website. It's hard to move because it's a really strong magnet, but that way you can put your fabric right up against it, and that will help you. You don't want to make sure get it up on top of it. You want to keep it right down beside of it, and you're going to keep it even with it all the way down to the bottom of your pants leg. Okay, now this is just a scrap because I was just showing you. I get to the end and I back stitch a little, and then I sew off, and then my machine cuts the thread, needle up, and pull it out. And you can see I was sewing with green. Now another thing I do is I trim off. If it gets really, really frayed, I'll trim it off and I'll zigzag it. This is finishing the inside of your seams, because over time this little edge will fray, and it'll fray and fray and fray, and then eventually it will come to this seam and it'll break open. So if you look at the inside of your seams on the sides of your pants or your shirt, you'll see that you have a finished seam. And a lot of people, the old style way with cutting it with pinking shears, the little zigzag scissors, pressing it open, but we're going to trim it just a little bit, and we're going to zigzag it. And some machines have, like, this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a 5, okay, the edges. So let me show you how to, we're going to cut off the edge just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit, and then we're going to zigzag the edges. Especially if your edges are uneven, you want them to be even so the thread can kind of one on, one off, and kind of wrap around that edge. All right, you can see right here, I'm just barely cutting just a little bit off. And I'm going to just go all the way up, and it gets it even and gets some of that frayed area off. And then we're going to zigzag it. So I'm going to finish doing that, and then I'll show you. Okay, so I've trimmed it off. All the edges are even. It's going to fray. This fabric I have is 100% cotton, and it's a Christmas fabric from Hobby Lobby, and it's real thin. I get hot, so I like thin fabric. And so I'm going to turn this over to a zigzag stitch, and then I'm going to make it a 4.5 and a 1.8. That makes the zigzag a little bit wider, and then the length in between those zigzags a little bit longer. Okay. Now I'm back over here with my presser fit. I'm going to put it down, and I'm going to roll that one down, and that's my zigzag. You see how that's totally off the fabric? Okay, I can actually scoot it over just a little bit. I want it barely off. One on, one off. I do not want to touch my seam. I want to stay on the right hand side of that, because if I go over, it's going to show little green threads picking out. All right, so I'm just going to go one on, one off, one on, one off. So I'm going to do this down both pants legs. Another thing you can do too, often if I'm making the pants to sell or to give away as a present, I'll actually reinforce the seam and seam right over it again to give 2 threads, 2 seams. So I'm just going to go all the way down. You can go really slow. Okay, and again, this is a scrap, not the actual pants. So when I get to the bottom, I will back stitch just a couple, and then needle up, pull it out, and cut off your threads. Now, it will fray a little bit, okay? But if you look at it, it's really nice, and it goes all the way around it. Just trying to show you close up. And so when you sew that, in a little while when you sew your curves, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to put it right on that 5/8 line. You can move your magnetic guide closer to it, but keep it on that 5/8 inch guide. Sew down through there all the way, however where you need to sew it, and then you need to trim the edges just a little bit. If you ever trim too much, you can always go back and reinforce that seam. Okay. Okay, so we're back to the big table, and we have sewn our leg seam here, and we have sewn our leg seam here. Okay, so this is where it's a little bit weird, but just trust it. All right, so if you look at your instructions, you see there's a darker one and a lighter one, and you do not see a seam like the inside right here. You don't see it right here. You only see it right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up those legs, and we're going to put right sides together. All right, so let me show you. This one is still wrong side out because you see the seam. This one is wrong side out. Now I'm going to turn this one leg right side out. All right, look at that. We got one leg. Cute. Okay, so there's that seam. All right, so I'm going to take this seam and put my arm in it. Okay. And then I'm going to take this pair right here. Okay. And there is the right side of that inside there. So I'm going to take this pair right here. I'm going to grab the bottom. You see the seam right here? And I'm going to put that inside that all the way to the bottom. And then I'm just going to shake it all out. Okay. And what you're going to have is that seam right there and this seam right here. Okay. Right in that middle of the curve. So we're going to put that right there together. I'm just going to shake it out. And once you kind of get it pulled up like this, you see that? I can pull it down just a little bit from the inside here at the bottom. Okay. What I'm going to do now, get my pins. I'm going to get this seam and this seam right sides together. And I'm going to put those two together. I'm going to have this seam, this one going one way and that one going the other way, so they won't be so bulky. And then I'm going to pin through that. And then I'm just going to pin around this, just one side at a time. What you should have is, there's your notches right there. Let's go ahead and match those up and put a pin in that. And then you have this little curve thing, and it should be the same size. I'm going to pin this in here, and then I'm going to go all the way up here to the top. All right, and then putting those two together there. All right, so I pinned that side of the curve. Now I'm going to do the same thing over here. Look at that. So you see your big giant notches. So I'm going to put those two big giant notches together. Oop, drop the pin. There it is. And then I'm going to pin this little curve right here. Right here. And then I'm going to work my way back to the top, to matching the top up and pinning that. Now this is a one-piece pattern, but there are two ways to make pajama pants. There's a one-piece pattern, which we're using, and there's a two-piece pattern. All right, so let's take a look at this. I'm going to lay this out for you. Okay, and see if you see that curve there at the top. And let's look at our picture right here. So we put that inside there, and then we matched up that, and we pinned around that U. All right, so now you're carefully going to put this underneath your machine, starting either way. I think it'd probably be easier to start on this side, on the left-hand side of the curve. So put that there and just work your way around, just keeping it flat, doing 5/8 inch in. That's your U. And we are getting close already. Okay, so we have sewn around our U. Okay, now for the fun part. Okay, yeah, and I was looking at the pattern. I've done this so many times I sometimes forget, but it does say with right sides together, pin the center seam, stitch, and to reinforce seam, stitch over again the first stitching. So number 3 actually tells you to reinforce it. Okay, they also tell you to keep elastic from getting stuck on number 4, that you can use fusible web. I honestly don't ever do that because we finish the seams. We're not going to press our seams open. We're pushing them to one side. So what we're going to do is when we do the elastic, we're going to push the seams at the top, and I'll show you what I mean, to one side, like to the right, all of them to the right. So that way when we push the elastic in all the way around, it will not get stuck. Okay, so this is the fun part. We're going to reach in and grab only one leg, and we get to pull it out. Okay, so there's pants. Woohoo! Now, when you try these, if you try these on, the top's going to go like way on up to mid chest. So it's kind of funny. But also, if you take the crotch seam where you sewed it together and you hold that crotch seam and you pull one of them, the back should be bigger. So when we make the casing for the elastic, we'll put a little tag back there so you'll know that that's the tag. So you don't have to hold the crotch seam every time you figure out the back. But that's how you figure it out if you want to. Okay. Number 5 says press 1 1/8 inch on upper edge to inside, forming casing, and then press under 1/4 inch on raw edge. So what you can do is you can do the 1 1/8, but what I do too, you can do, so, okay, so what you're going to do, and I'll show you at the iron, we're going to do, you could do 1 1/8 inch and fold that down, but I do like 1/4 inch and then iron that, and then I fold it down another, like a little bit more than the elastic. So once you get this measurement, you can see how big you need to make it to make your elastic fit in there. Because sometimes you're making your pants and you go, oh, I don't have my 1 inch elastic. I have 1 1/4 inch elastic, or I have a 1/2 inch elastic. So you can kind of see what you need based upon the size of elastic that you happen to have bought or happen to have at home. All right, so let's go ahead and make a casing for this, and I'll show you the ironing board. I've already folded it down, so I'm going to show you what I did. Okay, so here is the raw waistband at the top. I folded it down about 1/2 inch, and then I ironed that 1/2 inch all the way around, making sure it was 1/2 inch. I just kind of tested all the way as I'm folding it. And then I went back around and I folded this down about 1.5 inches. My elastic is about 1.25 inches. No, it's about 1 inch, a little over 1 inch. All right, so this right here is you can use a safety pin, or you can use this. This pushes the elastic through. Okay. All right, so it's like a tweezers kind of. So you put this down on it. You don't do it too far, because when you push that down, it can pull out real easy. So it's got a little point in there. So I'm going to put it close to the end. Believe it or not, it's easy. It holds it better if you put it close to the end. And this scoots way down, and then it will not pull out. And so you can do that, or you can also use a safety pin Sometimes I'll put a safety pin on the end. Okay, and either one, I do both if I can't find what I've done with that. All right, so once I have folded that down and ironed all the way around, and just keep twisting around till you've done folded it down all the way. All right, I'll put one more pin right here. All right, so now you're actually going to go down here at the crotch, okay, and there's a seam right here. So I'm going to hold that seam right there at the crotch, and then I'm going to pull one of them up. And the back one is always bigger, okay? So this is, I'm going to flip it over here. This is the back. Yeah. So normally I take a little piece of ribbon, and you could just put it back there in the back, and then when you're sewing, you can sew right over that, and we're going to leave an opening so we can put our elastic in. Okay, so there's that. But I also have some of my Aerybeth tags. You can see that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut it off. You can order these with your name on them if you want to. Okay, so here's my tag. And then you've seen them in pants where they're folded like that, and you can sew on the sides if you want to. But what you can do, if you don't want a tag up here, you want it at the back. So I have this little area up here where I can sew it, tuck it in, and then here's the bottom piece. You have to be careful because these will catch on fire. Get close to the end, and you can seal the end of it so it won't fray. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to put that in there. Okay. I got one of these pins over here. I had extra. And that's where I want my tag, right in the back. That way you won't have to struggle with finding which is the back and which is the front. Alright, so now I'm going to sew all the way around, but I'm going to stop. So I'm going to start about right there, right before it. I'm going to start right here, go all the way around. I'm going to stop right here and leave an opening so I can put my elastic in. Alright, so now I'm at my sewing machine, and I'm going to start sewing right in front of my tag. Go ahead and take that one out. Go forwards. Back stitch a couple times. And then I'm going to make sure that's on the seam where I want it. And just keep pulling it around, making sure this area is flat. Okay? And you just keep pulling it around. Okay? Alright, there's our tag. Alright, I'm going to leave a couple inches open right here. I'm going to go ahead and back stitch. Needle up, press your foot up, pull it out, cut it off. Now, I can put it in this way. Okay, and I want to make sure that there's my seam going that way. Alright, so I'm going to put the elastic in. Let me flip it around here. Alright, so I'm putting this in, and then I'm going to squish it, the fabric. Let's see if we can see it. Okay. Squish the fabric on top of that threader, the elastic threader, and then pull the fabric. Let me take a little bit of jiggling to get it started. Okay. Now, once you kind of get it started, make sure that's flat in there. Now I'm going to hold it back, squish it on. Okay, now it's all squished on. Now I'm going to pull the fabric only. Now, over here at the beginning where we started, okay, so here's that. So be careful if it gets started and get near the end, you want to stop and safety pin it onto the fabric so you won't pull it through and then have to go back and start again. Alright, so I'm just going to push that on top of that. It's all squished on. I'm going to pull the fabric. I'm going to push that out. grab hold of it. Okay. Now I've got a lot of little elastic right there. I've got plenty of elastic down here. So I'm going to just hold the elastic so it won't be pulled back through and just kind of keep pushing it back around. Okay, so here we go. Here's both of our pieces. Alright, so I'm going to grab those and put them together. Make sure they're flat right here. And then I'm going to fill all the way around to make sure the elastic is not twisted. Okay, if you've sewn too close in, sometimes your elastic doesn't have room, and so you may have to go back and seam rip it and pull it back down. You need to always have room for your elastic plus a little bit more so it has room to move in there. Okay, alright, so I'm going to take these two and I'm going to pull them out a little bit and take these little turners off, and now I'm going to overlap them. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew back and forth over it, and then I'm going to put it back in there, and then I'm going to sew close to the bottom and close up that hole. Okay, but I'm going to keep that pulled out, make it easier to sew over. Okay, so you're just going to put your pants down and you're going to just get it as flat as you can, and I'm going to put it right even in the middle and put my needle down. Okay, and then I can move all the rest of it kind of out of the way. Alright, and now once I do that, I can actually back stitch back to the beginning and go forward a little bit. And after I do that, I can actually take this pin out because it's really not going anywhere. Alright, and you don't want to stretch it, you just want it to be flat. So I'm going to go across and back and just keep going. And then it looks like messy. Alright, so I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to get the scissors and cut these tabs off. They're sticking out. And then there's one underneath. Okay. Now, if you finish sewing and you've tried it on and you had, oh crud, it's too big. Alright, so you can cut it like right here and overlap it again. Alright, say that it's for a child and they've outgrown it, but the pants still fit. You can actually cut them, and then you could put another piece of elastic and attach it over here and over here on two other sides. Okay, so you can always extend this, or you can cut it totally out and put a whole nother piece of elastic in, because pajamas are meant to be baggy. Alright, so now I'm going to stretch this out. You see how it's sticking out? And I'm just going to keep pulling. And look at this. Alright, now you can't see it. So I'm going to put this, tuck it between the little legs to the back, and I'm going to put this under here. And I'm going to go into the existing stitches, put my needle down, I'm going to back stitch. Okay, we got some threads going on, I cut that up. But here's where we started. So I'm going to go back front, back, make sure not. Go into some existing stitches, back stitch a couple times, needle up, press your foot up, pull it out. And you can cut off all your threads. There's some on the top, and then there's always the bobbin where you began and where you ended. Both of those are required to sew things together. Okay, so I tried my pants on, and with this pattern, they're very long. Can you see right here? I've turned it up. Oftentimes, it might be easier to try them on wrong side out, and then you can fold them up and pin them, and then see where you need it to be. And then, so I pinned it in one section, and then I folded it up all the way around, and this is around 5 1/4 inches. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get one leg fixed, and then I'm going to put it up next to the other leg. That way it will be the same size. Different people do it different ways, but oftentimes we are not perfect when we cut, So if I get this leg like I want it, then I'll get the other correct by putting it next to it. All right. So I folded it down here in the middle. That's about 5 and almost a quarter, but it's kind of got jaggedy edges. And see, that's about the same, and that's about the same. All right. Now I wanted you to notice this, and if you looked at your pattern, these legs, I don't know if you can see that, taper down. It's a little bit skinnier at the bottom and wider at the top because they're pajama pants. They're not going to be fitted pants. They're going to be very baggy. And then the very first pair that you make will be what you decide, okay, well, this was a little bit too big. I could go with the smaller size. And that's what I've generally found with pajama pants. But if you're making them for yourself, you want some room to move around in, especially at night watching TV. You want some sleeping room, and you don't want it to be tight, especially if it's cotton. This is cotton non-stretch fabric. Now, for kids too, it's great to keep the bottom hem often because they're going to grow, and then you can let out the hem, and you could actually hem this by hand. I'm going to hem this by machine. I'll do another video on how to hem by hand, and please look that up. But it tapers down, so it squishes it in. So if you don't want to deal with the squished in, that's going to be on the inside. So it's not, what we're going to do is we're going to fold this down. So I'm not going to keep all this hem because I'm not growing anymore. Okay. So what I'm going to do, this is a 5-inch hem, or 5 1/4, but I only want it like max of 2 inches, but we can make it even smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way around and mark it at the 2-inch mark, and then I'm going to cut it off there and then fold it back under, so I'll end up with a 1-inch hem. Okay, let's see if it makes sense. If I have a 2-inch hem, there's 2 inches right there, and there's 2 inches right there, 2 inches right there, 2 inches right there. Okay, so I'm going to connect those dots, and you can use a straight edge. I'm just doing this gently right now. Okay, so here's my 2 inches right here. Okay, I'm not cutting all the way through that. I'm just going to be cutting on that line. So if I cut on that, and then I can fold it under. So let me go all the way around, marking the 2-inch mark. And the reason I'm doing this is it's going to be less bulky and less, because it tapers down. The smaller the hem, you won't have all this weirdness going on where it tapers. All right, so I'm going to flip it over. Okay, let's see where I was. Okay, so this one needs to be pulled down just a little bit. And it just gets all crinkly because it's tapered. Let's just do 2 inches here, 2 inches here. All right, I'm going to continue that little line right there. I'm going to flip it over to the other side. But see, now I've got this started right here. And let me check it. See the 5 and almost a quarter. So if I put it here, the 2 inch, 2 inch, 2 inch. And I have marquee pens, but sometimes they don't work right. Chalk always works for you. And if you're not sure where that 2 inches is, okay, you can use your little guide. All right. All right. Let me show you what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I know it feels so weird, I'm going to cut to right there, and then I'm going to cut on that 2 inch mark that I made. And only through one layer. Don't accidentally cut through your pants. I mean, you could fold this whole thing down and hem it, that huge part, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut all the way. Flip it around. Now, it's still folded up for my hem, but we have a lot less of the tapering. You see this over here? It's not all bundled up and jabbed in that corner. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give that a good press and steam. All right, and now I'm going to take this and I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to tuck it under to that little crease we just made. Okay, and I'm going to put a pin right there. Rotate it around, pick it up, tuck it under, and you should have a 1 inch or a little more hem. Okay, you can see that. Okay. Alright, now if you want to iron, you can iron that little crease right there. Bring my pins over here. I'm going to rotate it around. Pick it up. Put that under there. Put my pin in it. Always tuck it to that crease. And if it gets bigger than 1 inch, then you know that you probably haven't tucked it all the way to that crease. And this is really how you would do the waistband too when you're putting elastic in it. And actually, this right here, you could sew all the way around it and leave an opening, and you could put elastic in the ankles, and it would be cute little pants as well. All right, so here is the bottom of our pants. Okay, now we're going to sew all the way around it, and then I'm going to put it up next to the other ones and get that length perfectly right. Okay. Alright, so my threads are between the little foot to the back. I'm going to take out that first pin and set that down right on that. Straighten it all out. Now, if it's a little bitty leg, you can actually take off the free arm again and put it around your sewing machine. It makes it sometimes easier. So I'm going to go frontwards, backwards, so very close to that top edge. Again, you can do both legs at the same time if you want to, or you can do one leg at a time. By the time you get around, you'll have a twisted pants leg. And see, there's a tiny bit of crinkling there, and that's from the tapering. You can kind of just give it a little pull. It's cotton. This one stretches. But if we would had hemmed it way up here, it would have been a lot of tapering, and you couldn't have hemmed it correctly that way. You want a little hem. And the pattern, here is the top of the pants, and I kind of open it up and put the top of the waist together, and here's that curve. Okay, so I get the top really even right together. Okay, I have that curve, and I'm going to pull this, get all my stuff out of the way for a second. Here's my raw edge down here. So I'm straightening those legs up, and that's our hemmed leg. All right, so I'm going to straighten this up, getting those legs together, and I'm just going to keep pulling that up. And if you have a table, you can just lay it all out flat. Okay, just one whole consistent, and you can see how long this extra is. So I'm going to fold this up. And remember, when we did the other one, it was like 5 1/4, almost 1/4. So I'm going to fold this up. And get it all straight. And then I'm going to get my sewing gauge, and it's not quite 5 1/4. Okay, that one is, that one's not. Alright, so I'm going to put that down there, the bottom. Okay, that matches. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a good crease. But then I'm going to measure on both sides and make sure it's the same. 5 1/4. Okay, so once you have it folded, matching the other leg perfectly, you can start marking your 2-inch marks. And then keep continuing to do that. You can mark it like I did the other one. You can also do it this way. Go back around, overlap just a couple stitches, back stitch, needle up, press your foot up, pull it out, and then cut off all your threads. Alright, it's a great one to start with, and I'm very proud of you. You should be very proud. I'm going to make a matching applique shirt. So I went by a local store and got just a regular, like a t-shirt, and I've got some leftover fabric. And so I'm going to put some kind of probably Christmas design on this applique, so I'll have a pajama set for Christmas. So anyway, enjoy, and if you have any questions, please feel free to message me. Have a wonderful day. God bless, and enjoy sewing.